Bitches be thinking you him. I'm not with him. If you're him, why would you think I'm him? With him.
At 2:50 in the morning, on a quiet street called Torrington Place in Dayton, Ohio, a back door was kicked in. Then another, until something got through. Inside that house was a 26-year-old woman named Montana Davis, a nurse, a mother. And somewhere in those same walls, two children, 1-year-old and 4 years old, were awake in the dark, listening. What happened inside that kitchen in the next 60 seconds cannot be undone. Montana Davis was shot multiple times. She was still alive when a Dayton police arrived. She did not stay that way. Here is what makes this case different from every other case you have heard. Earlier that same night, Montana Davis had picked up her phone, dialed 911, and told the dispatcher in Montgomery County exactly who was coming. She gave them a name. She told them what he threatened to do. She told them her children were inside. They wrote it all down. And then it happened anyway. Every case starts with evidence and ends with truth. We examine facts, not theories, details, not drama. Subscribe now and stay updated as we uncover the facts behind every case.
Judge told a man he will never get out of prison after killing his ex-girlfriend. In Montgomery County, News Center 7's Malik Patterson talked to the victim's family.
Family members and friends of Montana Davis just held a balloon release at this house right behind me. Now, they are celebrating and remembering the life and memory of a family member, friend, and mother.
Justice for Montana!
Thursday, dozens of people dressed in pink with their matching balloons. That was for Montana Davis. That was Montana Davis' favorite color. Her family said she was also bright and full of life to match. We are approaching 2 years since the night of the killing on April 2nd, 2024. Davis called 911 and said that Jamarte Brown called her several times threatening her. She also stated that she was fearful he would come to her home and shoot her. Brown did just that. Davis at the time had a 1- and 4-year-old in the house. Thursday, I spoke to Davis's mother and sister about how they feel to finally get justice and how Davis's kids are currently doing.
I'm still grieving and happy that he got life without parole.
The oldest one would just break out in tears because she misses her. The baby girl, she remembers her mom, but she doesn't understand.
Prosecutor Heck also stated in the sentencing today that the killing of Davis was senseless and tragic. Now, Melissa told me that she is going to take Davis's children to her grave site on Valentine's Day so they can decorate it and make it look pretty. For now, in Dayton, Malik Patterson, News Center 7.
Montana Antoinette Lemeke Chantel Davis was a 26-year-old woman from Dayton, Ohio. She was a nurse, a profession that demands discipline, composure, and a serious commitment to the well-being of others. By every account from those who knew her, those qualities were not limited to her job. People who knew her described her as smart, driven, caring, and someone who would extend herself to help others without question. She was also a mother. At the time of her death, she had 2 young children, a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. Both of them were in the house with her the night she was killed. That detail is not a footnote. It is central to understanding the full weight of what happened in the early hours of April 3rd, 2024. Montana had moved on with her life. After ending a relationship with a man named Jamarte Latrell Brown, she had built a new life for herself. She was employed, she was raising her children, and she had started a new relationship. By all visible measures, she had closed the chapter on Brown and was moving forward. That decision, to leave and to move on, is what set the events of April 3rd into motion. Jamarte Latrell Brown was 24 years old at the time of the murder. He and Montana Davis had a prior relationship. The exact length and nature of that relationship have been documented in court records, but what is clear is that Brown did not accept the end of it. According to accounts that emerged during the investigation and trial, Brown had been persistent in his attempts to re-establish contact with Davis after their breakup. He sent repeated messages and left multiple voicemails. The nature of this communication escalated over time, ultimately moving from unwanted contact into direct threats. On the night of April 2nd, 2024, just hours before the shooting, Brown's behavior reached a critical point. He began calling Davis, and according to the 911 call Davis made that night, he was threatening her. He was not making vague or ambiguous statements. He was threatening to come to her house and do something that would require law enforcement involvement. Davis took that threat seriously enough to call 911. That call is one of the most significant pieces of evidence in this case. She named Brown explicitly. She told dispatchers what he was threatening. She told them she had 2 children in the home. In doing all of this, she created a documented, time-stamped record of Brown's threats hours before he carried them out. Montana Davis called 911 on the evening of April 2nd, 2024. She reported that her ex-boyfriend, Jamarte Brown, was repeatedly calling her and threatening her. According to Montgomery County Regional Dispatch Center records, Davis clearly identified Brown by name. She told the dispatcher that he was threatening to shoot up her house. She told them she had 2 children inside. This call is critical for one reason. It established before any crime was committed that Brown had communicated threats to Davis. It was not a retrospective accusation made after an incident. It was a live, real-time report of a man making specific threats. The dispatcher received that call, recorded it, and logged it. That record would later become part of the prosecution's case. What happened after that call is the central sequence of events that this case is built around. A short time after the 911 call, in the early hours of April 3rd, Brown arrived at the rear of Davis's residence at the 700 block of Torrington Place in Dayton, Ohio. He did not knock. He did not wait for an invitation. According to the court affidavit, Brown attempted to force entry by kicking at the back door and the back garage door. He continued until he succeeded. Once inside, Brown fired his weapon at Montana Davis multiple times. Officers and court records confirm that she was struck by multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and face. Davis's friend, who was also present inside the home that night, heard the shots. That friend retrieved her own firearm and returned fire at Brown before fleeing the residence. Brown was not struck. He escaped the scene before Dayton police arrived. Davis's 2 children, the 1-year-old and the 4-year-old, were in the house during all of this. Neither child was physically injured. Dayton police were dispatched at approximately 2:50 a.m. to the 700 block of Torrington Place following reports of a shooting. Upon arrival, officers found Montana Davis in the kitchen suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. They immediately attempted life-saving measures on scene while waiting for medics to arrive. Davis was transported to Miami Valley Hospital in Dayton. She underwent emergency surgery. She did not survive. She was pronounced dead during surgery. The Montgomery County coroner, Dr. Kent Harshbarger, officially identified her as the victim. In the span of a few hours, from the 911 call she made to protect herself and her children, to the moment she was shot in her own kitchen. The threat she had formerly reported had become reality. With Davis dead at Miami Valley Hospital and the crime scene secured, Dayton police launched their investigation. The evidence trail was not difficult to follow. Davis had named Brown hours before the shooting. Witnesses placed him at the scene, and Brown made a critical error in the immediate aftermath. Investigators, following leads from the scene, tracked Brown to a house in the 4500 block of Queens Avenue in Dayton. What detectives observed when they arrived there was significant. Brown was seen placing a firearm wrapped in a t-shirt into a storm sewer drain. This was not a subtle act. It was captured by investigators conducting surveillance, and it became one of the key pieces of physical evidence in the case. Detectives recovered the weapon from the storm sewer. Brown was arrested nearby. The gun tied him to the crime scene. Combined with the 911 call Davis had made hours earlier, the eyewitness account from the friend who was present in the house, and the physical evidence at the scene, law enforcement had a direct chain of evidence connecting Brown to the murder. He was taken into custody and transported to Dayton Municipal Court for arraignment. Jamarte Latrell Brown was arraigned in Dayton Municipal Court and faced an extensive list of charges. The full charge sheet included 4 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of aggravated burglary, 2 counts of aggravated robbery, 4 counts of felonious assault, 1 count of tampering with evidence. The tampering with evidence charge was directly tied to Brown's act of discarding the firearm into a storm drain, the same act detectives witnessed, and which led to his arrest. His bond was set at $1 million. He remained in custody as the legal process moved forward. On April 12, 2024, a Montgomery County grand jury formally indicted Brown on the charges. The case moved from municipal court to Montgomery County Common Pleas Court. On July 5, 2024, Brown's defense entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Under Ohio law, this is a specific legal defense that places the burden on the defendant to prove by a preponderance of evidence that, due to a severe mental disease or defect, they did not know the wrongfulness of their actions at the time of the offense. This plea triggered a legal requirement. The court ordered a formal mental evaluation of Brown. That evaluation was ordered on July 26, 2024, and was conducted by a qualified forensic examiner. The purpose of the evaluation was to assess 2 things: whether Brown was currently competent to stand trial, and whether his mental state at the time of the crime could support an insanity defense. On September 13, 2024, the case came before Montgomery County Common Pleas Court. Judge Mary Montgomery reviewed the results of the mental evaluation and issued her ruling. Brown was found to be presently competent to stand trial. The insanity defense would not clear him of the charges. The case would proceed to a full jury trial. The decision to pursue the insanity defense is worth examining. Brown was seen placing a weapon in a storm drain after the murder, a deliberate act of evidence destruction that, by definition, requires awareness of having committed a crime. That single action significantly undermined any argument that he did not understand the wrongfulness of what he had done. The trial of Jamarte Latrell Brown proceeded in Montgomery County Common Pleas Court. The prosecution, led by Montgomery County Prosecutor Matt Heck Jr.'s office, built its case on a straightforward and well-documented set of facts. The timeline was airtight. Davis had called 911 hours before she was killed, naming Brown and describing specific threats he made. Her friend, who was present in the home, was a direct eyewitness to the break-in and the shooting. Brown had been seen on surveillance discarding the weapon, the same weapon later recovered from the storm sewer. The ballistic evidence connected that gun to the crime scene. The prosecution also presented the fact that Davis's 2 children were inside the residence during the attack. This was relevant not only to the aggravated burglary charge, but to the overall picture of Brown's conduct. He forced his way into a home where young children were present and opened fire. The defense had limited room to maneuver. The insanity plea had already been rejected by the court. The physical evidence was extensive. There was a witness. There was a 911 call in which the victim herself named Brown before the crime occurred. The jury returned its verdict. Jamarte L. Brown was found guilty on all major counts: aggravated murder, aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, and felonious assault. Sentencing took place on February 10, 2026, before Judge Mary E. Montgomery in Montgomery County Common Plea Court. The sentence handed down was as follows: life in prison without the possibility of parole for the aggravated murder conviction. An additional 25 to 30.5 years for the remaining convictions to run consecutively. In practical terms, Jamarte Brown will never leave prison. The life without parole sentence alone guarantees that. The additional 25 to 30.5 years stacked on top of that is a statement from the court about the totality of his crimes: the burglary, the robbery, the assault, and the tampering with evidence. Montgomery County Prosecutor Matt Heck Jr. addressed the case publicly after sentencing, stating, "The murder of Ms. Davis by this defendant was senseless and tragic. Ms. Davis's 1-year-old and 4-year-old children, who were both in the residence at the time of the murder, were left without their mother." That statement is the clearest summary of the consequences that followed Brown's actions on that night. This is arguably the most important piece of evidence in the entire case. Before Brown arrived at the house, before a single shot was fired, Montani Davis had already named him to law enforcement and documented his threats. This is not something that could be explained away, dismissed as hearsay, or attributed to another party. It was her voice, on a recorded line, hours before her death, naming the man who would later kill her. Davis's friend was inside the home when Brown broke in. This person heard the argument over the phone, witnessed Brown force his way through the back door, heard the shots fired, and returned fire themselves. An eyewitness who was present for the break-in and the shooting is among the most direct forms of testimony available in a criminal trial. This individual's account corroborated every key detail of the prosecution's timeline. After killing Davis and fleeing the scene, Brown went to a location on Queens Avenue in Dayton. Investigators, having already identified Brown as the suspect, were watching. They observed Brown remove a firearm wrapped in a t-shirt and place it in a storm sewer drain. Detectives recovered the weapon. It was later matched to the crime scene. Brown's attempt to destroy evidence became, instead, the act that led directly to his arrest and generated a separate criminal charge. The crime scene at 700 Block Torrington Place provided corroborating physical evidence consistent with a forced entry from the rear of the property. The medical examiner's findings on Davis's injuries, multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and face, matched the witness account of what occurred inside the kitchen. The ballistic evidence from the recovered weapon tied the firearm to the scene. The murder of Montani Davis is a textbook case study in how domestic violence-related homicides often unfold. There was a history of a relationship. There was a separation that one party refused to accept. There was an escalating pattern of contact and harassment. There was a direct, explicit, documented threat made hours before the killing. And there was a killing. What makes this case particularly documented and particularly instructive is the 911 call. Davis did everything that is advised in domestic threat situations. She called law enforcement. She named the individual. She provided specific details about the threat. She created a record. And despite all of that, Brown arrived at her door less than a few hours later and broke through it. The criminal justice process, from arrest through sentencing, took approximately 22 months. Brown was arrested in April 2024. The jury delivered its verdict in January 2026. Sentencing occurred in February 2026. The process involved a full mental competency evaluation, a grand jury indictment, and a jury trial. At every stage, the evidence held. At the time of the sentencing, Davis's children, the 1-year-old and the 4-year-old who were in the house the night their mother was killed, would have been approximately 2 and 5 years old. They had lost their mother in a violent home invasion carried out by the man who had been their mother's ex-partner. That is the lasting consequence of what Brown did. Thanks for watching. Did you find this case informative? If you want more true crime stories, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.